What up? It's your boy Ray V. Let's get it.
Sad boy.
Sad boy quote of the day.
FA for Fields is for fantasy, so let's get into our deepest fantasies, baby.
I'll give you a third for him, though.
Comment section. MVMT claims. Trades are sent. Exhaling face emoji. Hey man, good luck. Hopefully your league mates play ball. You can compete this year. Stop being a lame, bro. Stop being a lame. Yo, never would have guessed it, but today's video is gonna be a 5 players to sell high video. We got interrupted by a work on your team Wednesday yesterday. My bad. Should have been this video, but you know, that WW, that alliteration, it gets me every time. But let's get into these 5 players that you should sell now since it might be their peak. First guy up is gonna be Jayden Daniels. I don't want to be that guy, but I will. We may have already seen the best of Jayden Daniels fantasy-wise. He had a prolific rookie season, followed by a sophomore slump riddled with injury. Did the league figure him out? Probably not, but his fantasy finishes last season in games he did play in were all outside of QB1 range. That's QB1 to QB12 overall that week. All besides week 6 against Chicago, he was QB5 overall. So maybe they did figure him out, but I don't know, and I don't really care. You know, I just really want to sell him. He has all that hype even though he's returning from injury. Will he even be the same? He injured his wrist, knee, hamstring, and dislocated his non-throwing arm elbow. I would not be surprised if he mentally did not want to run the ball as much anymore, but I would definitely guarantee that the coaching staff want him to run even less now. Even though he's a good passer, his rushing adds to his fantasy and his real life game. It raises his weekly floor in fantasy as well as helping him make big plays and staying on the field longer in real life. His ceiling is there, yes, but if he could sell on hopium alone, I'm selling. You are probably never getting a better market price than right now. That doesn't mean he's bad. It means Dynasty is all about asset arbitrage, and dual threat QBs with legendary rookie seasons almost always reach a valuation peak that's hard to sustain. His value already assumes he becomes a perennial elite fantasy QB. Daniels' rookie season was absurd. He had around 4,400 total yards, elite rushing production, and he became an instant top 3 Dynasty QB valuation. People literally debated taking him over Josh Allen as Dynasty QB1. The problem is, when a player is already priced at his 95th percentile outcome, there's often more downside than upside. If he finishes as QB7 instead of QB2, he becomes very good instead of league breaking. A player who misses 2 to 3 games annually, his Dynasty value can drop massively, even if he's still excellent. That's just how Dynasty economics work. Rushing QBs are fragile assets, and Daniels already showed the risk. Even believers have to acknowledge his durability concerns. Knee injury, hamstring injury, elbow dislocation, missed several games last year. He has a light frame, takes unnecessary hits, and is always compared to RG3 and early career Kyler Murray. The scary part isn't one catastrophic injury. It's the possibility of accumulated wear, reduced rushing over time, coaching staff protecting him, and fantasy production flattening. A huge chunk of Daniels' cheat code value comes from rushing volume. If that drops even 20%, he may go from untouchable to merely top 10 QB. We've seen this movie before with Dynasty quarterbacks. Dynasty managers consistently overestimate how long peak rushing dominance lasts. Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, even though he's still elite, the value swings happen. Anthony Richardson, Robert Griffin III. Daniels may absolutely avoid these outcomes, but if you can tear down from Daniels to another young QB plus an elite wide receiver plus a first, you often create a stronger long-term roster. That's the entire sell high philosophy. The gap between elite QBs and good QBs is sometimes overstated. The scoring difference between QB1 and QB8 is often smaller than the trade market suggests, and Superflex managers sometimes pay 4+ firsts, elite wide receivers, multiple cornerstone assets for a QB who may only outscore a cheaper quarterback by 3 to 4 points per game. If you can turn Jayden Daniels into Drake May and a wide receiver 1, Justin Herbert and 2 firsts, Joe Burrow plus elite running back or wide receiver, that can absolutely be the correct Dynasty move. Those are perfect tear downs. His current perception may still be stronger than his actual situation. A few subtle concerns in Washington's offensive environment may fluctuate. Rushing efficiency tends to regress. Touchdown rates often regress after monster seasons, and defensive adjustments happen fast in year 3 on. And if he has another injury-marred year, reduced rushing, or even mild passing regression, the untouchable asset aura disappears quickly. Dynasty value is partly narrative momentum. Right now, Daniel still has that aura. This is what a smart sell actually looks like. The mistake is not panic selling, dumping him off for picks, rebuilding forever. The smart move is tearing down while extracting a massive premium, like Herbert and Neighbors, Burrow and a first, May and BTJ, Caleb Williams and an elite wide receiver. If you could leave the trade with another high-end young QB, an elite non-QB cornerstone, extra insulation against injury volatility, you may improve your Dynasty roster even if Daniels remains great. To be fair, Daniels also has a legitimate path to becoming the overall QB1, a 10-year fantasy monster, or the next Lamar level edge. That's why people pay insane prices, but sell high doesn't mean he will fail. It means the market may value him closer to his ceiling than his medium outcome, and that is usually when Dynasty managers should consider cashing out. Next guy's gonna be Jaxson Dart, very similar to Jayden Daniels, pretty much the same exact argument. Great player, year, has a chance to be great, but worth the risk? I'm not so sure. Reminder, I'm not saying just to sell these guys off, get rid of these guys. I'm saying if the opportunity to sell high on these guys presents itself, I would at minimum indulge. Dart was fairly healthy last season besides the concussion stint that he missed 2 weeks for, but he was in the blue medical tent several times. I'm exaggerating here, but I want to say a record amount of times in a season, and all for concussion checks, I'm pretty sure. They already told him mid-season to take care of himself and stop running as much and taking those types of hits. Even though they called less run plays for him, he still took off several times, called his own number, did it all on his own for no reason. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't believe in concussions like his Brody Cam Scat, if we're being for real. Those guys are both here for a good time, not a long time. But I wouldn't be surprised if the coaching staff would spend a majority of this offseason to ingrain and brainwash and really beat into his head to run less. I could be wrong on that, but what is factual is that Malik Neighbors and Scat are both coming off major injuries. Neighbors might even start on the PUP list, and I'm just hearing he might just stay there all year long. Sources are saying it's definitely a possibility. With his main weapons looking to at least start off slow to begin the season, this may be the peak time to sell Dart. New, young, ascending offense that didn't really add anything through the draft or free agency offensively. In fact, they actually lost Wandale Robinson. If you could sell high on Hopium, I would. The sell high case for Jaxson Dart is actually stronger than Jayden Daniels' case, because with Dart, you're often selling the projection instead of the proven elite production. That's exactly where dynasty profits happen. People are pricing in the dream outcome already. Right now, Dart truthers are imagining franchise QB, rushing upside, SEC pedigree, next Bo Nix, Josh Allen-like development arc, or insulated value because he's young. But in Superflex Dynasty, once a rookie QB gets hype momentum, managers start valuing what if he hits almost as much as he already has hit. Nice. That creates an opportunity. If someone values Dart like a future top 8 Dynasty QB before he's actually proven it, you should seriously consider cashing out. The bust rate for rookie QBs is brutal. Dynasty managers constantly forget this. For every Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, CJ Stroud, there are multiple Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, from a Dynasty value standpoint at least. Those guys are all from the same exact draft class. Even first round NFL draft capital doesn't guarantee long-term insulation anymore. If Dart struggles for half a season, processing speed, sacks and turnovers, or accuracy under pressure, his value could crater incredibly fast. Young QBs are among the most volatile assets in Dynasty. His value is being inflated by an unknown upside. There's a weird Dynasty phenomenon. Proven good veterans become boring. Unproven young QBs become mystery boxes. Managers overpay for uncertainty because uncertainty contains ceiling. That's probably happening with Dart. Once a QB actually starts throwing picks, missing reads, and losing games, the fantasy community gets much harsher. Right now, people can imagine anything. That ambiguity is valuable. Mobile QBs lose value fast if the passing doesn't develop. A lot of Dart enthusiasts comes from that he can add fantasy points with mobility, but fantasy history says if a QB's rushing is doing the heavy lifting while the passing remains inconsistent, the market gets shaky quickly. Examples like Justin Fields, Anthony Richardson, maybe Malik Willis. The NFL eventually forces quarterbacks to win from the pocket consistently. If Dart becomes solid but not special, QB 14 to QB 18 territory, he's suddenly not worth anything near his current hype-based valuation. Rookie QB hype windows are often the best liquidation points. There are basically 3 peak value windows for Dynasty QBs: immediately after the NFL draft capital comes in, after preseason and training camp hype, or after an exciting rookie stretch. Those windows are driven by imagination more than certainty. If another manager wants to pay a proven veteran quarterback plus a first plus a young wide receiver for Dart before he's fully established, that's often sharp process. You can diversify risk while keeping QB production. The ideal sell high move is not sell Dart for random picks. It's convert uncertainty into insulated assets like Dak Prescott and a first, Trevor Lawrence and a wide receiver upgrade, Brock Purdy and an elite flex piece, Matthew Stafford and multiple picks if contending. You reduce the chance that one failed projection nukes your roster value. There's an uncomfortable truth about Dynasty. Dynasty managers love being early on quarterbacks. That emotional attachment creates irrational markets. People want their guy, the next superstar, or the league-winning young QB. If your league mates believe Dart is ascending into the elite tier, you may be able to extract a package that assumes his best case scenario. And if that happens, you should. Next guy you guys are gonna hate, but it's Trey McBride. McBride is coming off a historic season. He literally cannot get any higher than this, probably. Literal definition of peak. He finished as the overall tight end 1 in fantasy scoring. He had 169 targets and an NFL tight end record of 126 receptions for 1,239 yards and 11 touchdowns. This was literally peak Gronk and Kelsey. That's how good he was last year. But I'm hearing you saying he's been so good though, right? Only way to go is up, right? McBride is only 26 and still in his prime, right? He's still signed till 2029, isn't he? He's productive and just had back-to-back top 2 fantasy finishes at his position, right? Definitely all true. But the situation in Arizona has changed drastically. They have the number 1 hardest schedule this season. They added a very competent runner in Jeremiah Love. Marvin Harrison Jr. should be healthy. Michael Wilson broke out late last season. Jacoby Brissett is currently holding out, and he was a key factor to unlocking McBride by hyper-targeting him. The other key factor in McBride's ascension was in his OC. Don't remember his name, but he left, and he went to Detroit. Garner Minshew or Carson Beck will be good for the Cardinals, but but a big downgrade for McBride. And not to be that guy, is he going to break the catch record again? Will he score 11 touchdowns again? His touchdowns in his first 3 seasons were 6 combined. You're not betting against talent, you're betting against position volatility, touchdown regression, and the possibility that his dynasty value has reached an unsustainably high peak. And honestly, this may be the easiest sell high argument so far. His market value is approaching wide receiver 1 territory. This is the core argument. McBride is being valued in some leagues ahead of elite wide receivers, near top 10 startup value, and as a set and forget advantage asset. Some dynasty rankings value him above Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's usually the warning sign. When a tight end starts getting priced like an elite young wide receiver cornerstone, the market may have gone too far. Tight end production is historically volatile. Even elite tight ends can swing wildly year to year. We've seen this with Mark Andrews, George Kittle, Travis Kelce late in his career, Kyle Pitts from a dynasty value standpoint. The difference between tight end 1 overall and tight end 5 overall often isn't large enough to justify gigantic market premiums, especially in non-tight end premium formats. If McBride becomes just another elite tight end instead of the elite tight end, his value probably drops meaningfully. His 2025 season may have been close to his ceiling outcome. McBride's production explosion was insane. Monster target shares, huge reception totals, touchdown spike, and elite red zone usage, but there are several signs already pointing towards likely regression. Arizona led the NFL in pass rate, 11 touchdowns are hard to repeat, the offensive philosophy may have changed, and QB uncertainty could reduce efficiency. Even people who love McBride admit repeating a nuclear tight end 1 season is difficult. If he goes from 126 catches, 11 touchdowns to 92 catches and 6 touchdowns, he's still awesome, but his dynasty market value probably declines. Tight end longevity is overrated in dynasty discussions. People say elite tight ends last forever. Sometimes true, but elite tight end value can still shift quickly. One season of fewer touchdowns, target competition, QB instability, scheme changes, and minor injuries, and dynasty managers suddenly stop treating you like a cheat code. McBride's value currently assumes sustained elite target dominance, continued offensive volume, and long-term stability in Arizona. That's a lot of assumptions baked into one asset. You can often tear down without losing many points. This is a sneaky dynasty move. If you can move McBride for Sam Laporta and a first plus, Tucker Kraft and a wide receiver upgrade plus, Dalton Kincaid and future first plus, you may lose surprisingly little weekly edge at tight end while massively improving your roster depth. That's often optimal in dynasty process. Positional advantage can become a trap. This is where dynasty players get emotionally attached. Managers love the idea of, I never have to worry about tight end again, but sometimes they overpay for psychological comfort. If your league is paying 2+ first, elite wide receiver value, startup round 1 pricing for a tight end, you at least have to explore the market. To be fair, the strongest anti-sell argument is McBride may simply be entering a Kelce level prime. There's a real argument that he's the safest tight end asset in Dynasty, he's still young, and he provides a weekly edge few players can match. That's why managers refuse to move him unless the offer is absurd. And honestly, that's reasonable, that's fair. The best Dynasty approach with McBride is don't force a sale, but absolutely test the market. Because if someone in your league values McBride like a top 5 overall Dynasty asset, a guaranteed multi-year tight end 1, or untouchable, you may be able to cash out at the exact moment maximum value exists. Next guy is DK Metcalf. Metcalf probably wasn't going that high to begin with, but if he gets any boost at all from the Aaron Rodgers signing, please sell him. There's a chance McCarthy schemes him up better than all vertical and clearing out routes as opposed to last year. I'm not taking that chance. The 2 wide receivers added this offseason were Michael Pittman and Jeremy Bernard. These guys thrive in the middle of the field and underneath. Those tea leaves tell me that Metcalf is going to be sprinting straight for a majority of snaps. Like I said, I could be wrong, but I'd rather get out of him early than late. The sell high case for DK Metcalf is less about he's overrated and more about dynasty managers are often still valuing the idea of DK Metcalf more than the actual fantasy result. Because when you really zoom out, his reputation has stayed elite far longer than his production has. His name value is stronger than his recent fantasy production. This is the biggest point. Metcalf still carries the aura of an alpha wide receiver, physical freak, league-winning upside, and untapped ceiling, but the actual results have been much more volatile. He hasn't had a top 12 wide receiver finish since 2020, despite retaining massive market value for years. That disconnect matters. If a player is still being valued as a high-end wide receiver 2 or one bounce back away from elite status, despite years of inconsistency, that's often a strong liquidation signal. He's entering the dynasty danger zone for wide receivers. DK Metcalf is 28 years old. That may not sound old in redraft, but in dynasty, this is exactly when wide receiver value starts decaying fast unless the player is truly elite. Once a wide receiver approaches age 29, declining explosiveness, and uncertain QB play, the market gets brutal very quickly. The scary part is, his value probably won't decline gradually. It'll likely happen in chunks. One mediocre season and suddenly he goes from valuable veteran to aging wide receiver 3 nobody wants. His situation may not improve enough to revive peak value. The Pittsburgh situation is shaky from a dynasty perspective. There are concerns in aging QB play, lower passing volume, added target competition, and offensive philosophy limitations. He had career lows in targets and yards, concerns about reduced target share, and a potentially worse long-term outlook despite QB changes. Even if he rebounds statistically, the environment may cap him at boom-bust wide receiver 2 production instead of consistent wide receiver 1 upside. And once dynasty managers stop believing in the ceiling, the value drops hard. The market has been waiting for a Metcalf breakout for years. This is uncomfortable but important. People still talk about Metcalf like if everything clicks, but he's already entering year 8. At some point, who a player is matters more than who they can become. He is basically a perpetual upside bet whose peak value may already be behind him. That doesn't mean he's bad. It means the ceiling outcome people keep pricing him in may no longer be realistic. The reality is the wide receiver position is deep now. This changes everything. 5 years ago, a player like Metcalf felt rare. Now Dynasty has waves of young wide receiver talent, deeper wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 pools, and easier replacement value. Outside of truly elite difference makers, the wide receiver value has definitely flattened. So if Metcalf is not an elite separator, not a target hog, and not a top 5 producer, then managers may eventually stop paying premium prices for the archetype. However, you may still be able to sell the brand. This is key. Some managers still see 6'4", elite speed, highlight plays, wide receiver 1, Rodgers revival, and change of scenery. And if your league has one believer, you can probably cash out at a better value than his actual production trend suggests. That's exactly the type of dynasty arbitrage sharp managers chase. You're not trying to dump him for scraps. You're trying to re-roll into younger insulation or pivot into more stable production. A trade like DK into a younger wide receiver and a second, DK into a first, DK and a small piece into a safer elite wide receiver, or DK for a productive running back if you're contending right now. There are some real life trades going on right now that you're still getting a first for DK Metcalf, and if that's the sentiment of your league, sell, sell, sell. The anti-sell case is simple. DK is still insanely talented, and if QB play stabilizes, target competition settles, and he spikes touchdown variance, he could absolutely produce another wide receiver 1 season. That's why some managers still see him as a buy, but the sell high argument is the market may still be pricing the ceiling version of DK Metcalf instead of the most likely version. And for aging dynasty wide receivers, that's often the point where value evaporates faster than people expect. Last guy's going to be Jameson Williams. Sell, 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 JMO. Yes, he had 7 games as a top 12 wide receiver, a wide receiver 1 last year. Then he had 2 games landing as wide receiver 2, wide receiver 13 to wide receiver 24 overall. Then he had 1 game as a wide receiver 3, wide receiver 25 to 36 overall. Finally, the rest of the games, he was outside that range. He's just too volatile to be your wide receiver 2. I could be okay with him as your second flex, maybe, but that isn't the reason to sell. The reason to sell is because most of his best producing games came when Sam Laporta was out with injury. But people won't remember that. They will remember his stretch of wide receiver 1 finishes starting at week 10. He was wide receiver 2, wide receiver 8. Then he had a game where he played 97% of snaps and got 0 fantasy points, but we'll forget that part. Then he was wide receiver 4 overall, wide receiver 12, and then wide receiver 3. You're definitely going to forget to mention that donut he put up against the Giants out of all teams. And week 16 and 17, he scored 12 and 5.7 points respectively. But I'll give you a guess at which week Sam Laporta got hurt and was ruled out for the rest of the season. Yes, it was week 10. Not only that, but like I said earlier, the Cardinals OC who force-fed Trey McBride is now in Detroit. So it looks like Sam Laporta is the new Trey McBride. The sell high case for Jameson Williams is actually one of the cleanest in Dynasty right now because his value is finally catching up with his talent. And that's usually the moment where risk starts getting ignored. The argument is basically this. You're selling the explosion before the market fully prices in the volatility. His Dynasty value may finally reflect his ceiling season. For years, JMO was all projection, elite speed, first round talent, and if he ever finally puts it all together, now he finally did produce wide receiver 1 stretches, massive splash plays, league winning weeks, and top 12 seasonal finishes in many formats. And once Dynasty managers see former elite prospect plus breakout season plus still young, the market starts assuming sustained ascension. That's the exact moment sell high opportunities appear. His profile is still extremely volatile. This is the biggest concern. Even pro JMO truthers admit his fantasy production is heavily dependent on deep plays, explosive efficiency, and touchdowns. That's dangerous because those things fluctuate wildly year to year. He's still not really a target hog, an underneath volume wide receiver, or a guaranteed 10 target per game player. And historically, fantasy wide receivers who rely on chunk plays, long touchdowns, and efficiency spikes tend to have volatile dynasty value. He may never become the true alpha in Detroit. This matters more than people think. The offense still runs through Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'd even say Sam Laporta. Like I was saying earlier, it's important to point out that Laporta is returning fully healthy. The target competition and offensive philosophy shifts could pull JMO back into wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, flex territory. If he's only commanding 6 to 7 targets per game, then a lot of his fantasy ceiling depends on efficiency staying outrageous. That's fragile. Boom or bust wide receivers are usually overvalued after breakout seasons. Dynasty managers love upside wide receivers, especially guys who score from anywhere, post 30-point weeks, and look unstoppable on highlights. But those players can quietly become frustrating weekly starts. It's just a fact that he had multiple weeks under 5.5 points, including games with almost no involvement at all. Those profiles are exciting, but not always stable long-term dynasty assets. You may be able to sell the next superstar wide receiver narrative here. This is key. Right now, people can and convince themselves he finally broke out. He's entering his prime. The target share is coming. He's untouchable if he keeps ascending. That belief may create a market where managers pay a mid-first plus, safer wide receivers, or even borderline elite assets for a player who still has meaningful uncertainty. I've been seeing people argue mid to late first round picks for him or near established Dynasty wide receiver 2 territory. That's a massive rise from where he was a year ago. Detroit's ecosystem may have inflated efficiency. This is another sneaky Dynasty point. Detroit's offense creates spacing, play action explosiveness, efficient deep opportunities, and favorable coverage looks. JMO benefits enormously from that. But if offensive structure changes, like the OC leaving, QB play declines, efficiency regresses, or target competition tightens, his fantasy profile could become much shakier, and efficiency-dependent wide receivers tend to lose Dynasty value quickly once the spike weeks disappear. Remember, we want to do a smart sell high here. You're not trying to dump him because he's bad. You're trying to convert volatility into insulation, or cash out before regression hits. Trades like JMO for a safer wide receiver producer plus, JMO for a first plus, JMO plus for an elite wide receiver upgrade, or JMO for a more stable target earner archetype, because if he settles in as wide receiver 18 instead of wide receiver 6, his market value probably falls much more than his actual fantasy usefulness. To be fair, the counter argument is very real. There's a strong case that this is only the beginning. There's a chance that he's still massively undervalued, entering his true breakout, and capable of multiple wide receiver 1 seasons. And honestly, that's plausible. He's still young, explosive, and attached to a great offense. So why sell? Because Dynasty is often about selling players when the market starts pricing in the best case scenario. And with Jameson Williams, the market may finally be doing exactly that. I hope you guys like the players I brought to the table today and the analysis that came with it. Always remember, you can flip this on its head and buy low on these players if the manager in your league is willing to part well under this sell high value. These types of videos are to help you get a conversation going and try to get the activity bumping in your league. Of course, feel free to be a lame and not make any moves and sit with your mediocre team for yet another year. That's cool too. Hey, it's y'all's team, not mine. Me personally wouldn't let that slide and try for that dub this season, or tank for Jeremiah Smith. Pick your path, player. With that being said, never forget your daily dose of send that trade. Send it. Send it. That's it for today, though. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And remember, rebuilds fade, dynasties reign.
Call me a lover boy, simp, Libra. It's more than love sick. I got a fever. Feelings overloading. Not to be a diva. Standing 10 toes down. I'm not gonna leave you.